Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 650 for the 5th of December. There is clear indication, or not very clear indication, but there is indication that the Russians have launched their Siversk offensive. So this is the Siversk, and this is the Siversk Front, and the Russian forces apparently, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry's report, seem to have launched some kind of a major offensive, given the kind of attacks that is being reported across the front. There's reports of fighting reported at Bilohorivka in the Luhansk region, at Sperne. There is a bombardment at Verkhomokayansky, Serebryansky. There is attack at Vasily. There is attack at Rozdolivka, and also as bombardment at Rozdolivka. If you look at this situation, it looks a lot like a full-scale attack over in the Siversk Front. We do know that, according to the Ukrainian information, that the Russian forces north of Soledar, so this is Soledar, north of Soledar, they have a 5-1 advantage against the Ukrainian in terms of manpower, and we have this reported around a few sit reps ago, and we are anticipating that the Russians may launch an attack against the Siversk Front in the near future, which is now seems to be the case with the Ukrainian Defense Ministry mentioned this. This is also acknowledged by Ryba. Ryba mentioned that there was an attack up this the railway line towards Vimka, and they also mentioned the attack over at Bilohorivka. And I added these bombardments just to highlight the intensity of the battles in this area here. So we shall see how this goes. This is definitely the first day of this offensive. If this becomes one, because we cannot be sure, because the Russians do give up on offensive very suddenly, so, and also they do give up their offensive operation after 1 week. But given that the entirely weakened state of the Ukrainian military, I lean towards the possibility that the Russian will actually push on. So this is the current situation over at the Siversk Front, and there's another thing I need you guys to clap. Okay. Because good job, there is a Russian jet getting shot down. So the Russian Sukhoi 24M is actually a bomber that was shot down near the Snake Island. So according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, they mentioned that the Russian Sukhoi 24M was destroyed near the Snake Island, or the Vimini Island, under the cover. So the bomber was under the cover of a Sukhoi 30 SM fighter. So the bombers tried to launch a missile and tried to bomb Odessa region, and then it got shot down. It was unclear how they got shot down, and but it is actually a super long time since the Ukrainians actually shoot down anything on the Russian side. If you don't believe me, I actually have the source out. So these Telegram links, these are from the Ukrainian Air Force, and I went through their information. The last aircraft, which is a helicopter, the Ka-52, was shot down on the 17th of August. So September, October, November, December. So it's like 4 months ago, the last aircraft getting shot down. When is the last jet? It was 22nd of May. 22nd of May. So it was June, July, September, October, November, December. It's just half a year ago. Almost half a year ago was the last Russian aircraft getting shot down. So this is a tremendous long time ago, and so it is something worth celebrating for the Ukrainians, because yeah, they definitely celebrated this. Finally they shoot down something. And so what is important to note is that how do they shoot it down? Could that be a possibility that they actually installed some kind of air defense system on Snake Island, or they have something new being transferred into the Odessa region that allows them to defend the coast around this northern part of the Black Sea? This is unclear. Definitely the Russian Defense Ministry is going to be taking note about this possibility, because if this is the case, then the Russian jets will not be able to launch an attack from the Black Sea. This going to start to be a bit dangerous. We have no indication what kind of air defense system was installed along this coastline in the Odessa Oblast, or the Odessa region. So we move on to the next big front line, which is over at Avdiivka. So in the Avdiivka front, the Russian forces continue their Avdiivka offensive with the attack in the east, wrong color, with the attack in the eastern part of Bakhmutivka. There was a reported attack now in the northeastern part of Badaichi, at Stepove, at the coke plant in the south of Avdiivka, at Zhevny, and as well as Pervomaisky. Situation seems to be pretty much more or less the same. However, we do have some geolocation of Ukrainian forces. They're getting bombarded by the FPV drone near Tonenke. There's another MLRS, the great attack on Badaichi. There's another tank battle or armored battle. It's a tank battle. The Ukrainian tank actually was in the north of Stepove. So let me. The Ukrainian tank was here, the Russian tank was here, then they exchanged fire against each other. So this actually still continue to show that the front line pretty much is still at Stepove. Stepove is definitely not captured by the Russians. It's still a gray zone. The Ukrainians do not really want to stay in Stepove. They go in, fire, and then they scoot. They do not stay. If they stay, they will easily get destroyed by FPV drones and whatnot. So the Russians continue to hold their lines along the railway line, along the forest line. There is entrenched position previously was used by the Ukrainians, and that's where they launch raids and come back. So far, it doesn't look like the Russians are intending to capture Stepove yet, because if in a strategic sense, if the Russians want to push, they are not going to capture just Stepove. They're going to push all the way to Badaichi. That is the way how you do it, and then you entrench yourself along these three lines, and then so along these three lines, this is how the Russians will have to push in this area here, and then bring the battle to Badaichi. If they have no confidence or manpower, I don't think they will just take Stepove for the sake of it. They are not Ukrainians, so no. Ukrainian strategy is just taking grounds as much as you can. The Russians have no such urge to just take grounds for the sake of it. But clearly there are Russian generals or commanders that did that and then got punished for it. So, you know, something to take note about. So otherwise, there is nothing else around this region to talk about. And then in the Bakhmut Front, we have further, you know, developments around this region here. In the northern flank, over at the Bodanivka region, there is geolocation of Russian forces storming the trenches in just off Bodanivka. The Russian forces have continued to attack, and they are on the verge of reaching the furthest point that the Wagner forces managed to reach. So the Wagner forces around a year ago reached around this area here, just off Bodanivka, and then they never tried to, you know, really conquer Bodanivka. This is where they stopped. But then this time around, the Russians are continuing to push, and we're probably expecting more of it. There was this fighting reported at the nursery region. Apparently, the nursery, which is actually for plants, not for human beings, might be referring to this one. But yeah, no, but I can't find maps that actually call this the place, except that, you know, only from those military OSINTs talking about this area here. So you can kind of just assume that the Russian forces is currently fighting, you know, in this area here, and then, you know, the Ukrainian forces is using this you know, young plants as a plant shield. You know, they using I got a baby plant, and then don't shoot me. You shoot me, the baby plant will die. And I think it's pretty effective. The Russian forces is currently being held back around in this region here. So, you know, too merciful, you know, it's not good. You know, you cannot you have to just kill the plants. You know, how dare you? Anyway, there is geolocation of artillery striking Ukrainian positions along these tree lines. As usual, the trees are always the best places for the defenders, but the Russians strike artillery in this area here. This position cannot fall, because if the Russians manage to penetrate in the north of Bodanivka, then Bodanivka is lost, because Bodanivka is just another flattened town by this point. There is also reports of the Russian forces pushing over in the Kromove region. Deep State UA mentioned about this. Oh, actually no, this is actually previous day information. I forgot to delete this away. Yep, this is actually the information actually come from Ryba. So about the fighting in the north of Kromove. So the Russians are pushing in this direction, while the other force is actually pushing to Bodanivka in this way. So they are pushing north. There is also fighting reported west of Bakhmut. So you can see that the expanded zone of control in the Bakhmut countryside area. So there could be a possibility that the Russians actually pushing in this area here, but I have no mapping to corroborate this information. It's just my assumption, because if the Russians are pushing in this direction, Ukrainian forces holding in this position is not going to feel safe holding this position, especially the Russians are also pushing further south here. This is a pincer, so Ukrainian forces over this location might withdraw to save themselves if they do not have the kind of discipline and do not have the confidence in their command to give them further reinforcement and resupply and to make this pushback against the Russian push. So we shall wait and see how this progress. In the southern flank, as I mentioned about the fighting towards Ivanivsky already, there is continued fighting in the north of Klishchiivka as the Russians continue to push back the Ukrainian forces. No clear mapping just yet, but the Russians apparently captured some heights north of Klishchiivka. The heights usually is not very obvious even if you look at the relief mapping. So yeah, so they just give names to places so that they know what they're talking about. The Russian forces, according to Ryba, seems to have caused the entire northern part of Klishchiivka into some kind of gray zone based on their mapping. I did not indicate that because even in their report, they didn't mention about Russians storming into Klishchiivka. However, in their mapping, they put Klishchiivka into a gray, half of it into a gray zone. So maybe they are holding back certain informations, or maybe they missed out. We shall wait and see if this is true, if the Russians actually entered Klishchiivka entirely and bring the battle into it. But if that is true, I have my doubts about Ukrainian forces having enough forces to hold back. Then we're probably going to see some major evacuation from Klishchiivka. But if they do, then things is going to get very, very bad. It's going to turn into a rout. So if they do not hold the position, it's going to turn into a rout. There is, of course, the high grounds that the Ukrainian forces are holding. There's a lot of entrenchment around this area here. The Ukrainians must hold this position or they will be wiped out. As you can see, this is a pre-war entrenchment. You can see this. There's not much bombardment or any bombardment in this area, so this pre-war. So the Ukrainians currently is still holding this entrenchment around here. The Russians are currently pushing. So there's further more of this kind of entrenchment all along this ridge line just off Klishchiivka. So the Ukrainians must hold this position or they will be entirely pushed back across the canal, and that is going to be a PR disaster for the Ukrainians, because not because, but the Ukrainians cannot lose PR battles, because that's basically the battlefield that they are fighting in. Fighting is reported at Avdiivka and Kupyansk, but again we don't have information, so we shall continue to wait for further information. One interesting thing was into the New-York Front. There is fighting or bombardments at Toreks. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they say that the units of the York group of forces repelled Ukrainian attacks in the area of Toreks. But I can't tell where is this attack coming from, because it's so far away from the front line. We shall continue to wait and see. And we move into which front? The Donetsk Front. Donetsk Front is another very interesting thing, because the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also reported some major operation. The Russians basically attacked all of the major fronts in the Marinka direction. Krasnohorivka, Marinka, Boyeda, and Novomihailivka. It's basically the entire front line around this area here. So this is Krasnohorivka. The Russians are attacking Krasnohorivka, Marinka, Boyeda, as well as Novomihailivka. So Novomihailivka, of course, usually withdraw from the south, but it could also be attacking from the north or the east. We do not know, but it sounds like some major offensive as well. But this battle here has always been going on. So I do not want to say, oh, the Russians launched one major offensive in this area here. It's quite different from the Siversk one, because Siversk Front is usually more quieter. So, but we shall continue to monitor and see. Further geolocation of Lancet strikes. A Ukrainian controlled artillery piece got lancet in this area here. This is a Caesar artillery system. They got lanceted. By Lancet is basically a suicide drone, in case you do not know. One of the most advanced in the world, and extremely scary. And there's another drone strike also by Lancet at this position at Vodian. This is called what? What is this place called again? Ilyanka. So these two locations got drone strike by the Russians. Actually, I put it in the wrong color. It should be like this. Yeah. So, and then there's further shelling by the Russians over just off Novo-Mikhailivka. So all these geolocations is just keep showing the Ukrainians getting hit. I don't see a lot there are, but that is in terms of numbers of these geolocations. There isn't that much of the Ukrainians hitting the Russians. There are, but no, not as much as the Russians that are releasing. So the tide of war is definitely on the Russian side. Further in the most eastern part of the Donetsk Front, there is fighting reported at the Novodonetsk region, as well as in the south of Zolota Neva. South of Zolota Neva is reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, while the Russian Defense Ministry mentioned about the fighting near Novodonetsk. It could be the same thing. It could be the Russians just pushing northward from Novodonetsk, and then they say that they are fighting around this area here, while the Ukrainians say that it's coming from the south of Zolota Neva. So either way, this is yet another initiation of fighting. The last time the fighting here was on the 25th of November. As you can see, it's always a one-off, 11, 13, 25. So it's very sporadic, very probish. Novodonetsk is even longer. It's from 19th of November, and then 22nd October is Novodonetsk region is very, very quiet in comparison. And then we move into the Zaporizhzhia Front. So this is Zaporizhzhia. At the Zaporizhzhia Front, the Russian forces bombarded Stepnohursk. According to the military summaries geolocation, Russian shells hitting Ukrainian deployment positions north of Stepnohursk. And over at the Orikhiv sector, the Russian forces continue their counteroffensive over the Verbove region, as well as the northwestern of Verbove. Information comes from Ryba, as well as Ukrainian Defense Ministry about this Russian offensive. As I mentioned in the previous SITREP, I mentioned this offensive from Verbove sounds quite serious. Sounds like a big offensive operation, a big assault operation, and this seems to be continuing to be the case, as you can see from the reports from Ryba emphasizing this attack. The geolocation of Ukrainian forces continue to be hit by FPV drone in Robotine. So no, it's definitely not a safe place to be for the Ukrainians. However, there is no fighting being reported around the Novo-Prokopivka region and the western part of Robotine. So that is very interesting. And previously, we do have all this report about Ukrainians attacking Novo-Prokopivka. The last one was on 28th of November. It seems to go nowhere. And it's pretty depressing to be a pro-Ukrainian supporter right now, I guess. Because, these attacks would, it sounds like a good thing, It doesn't sound very far away, very far-fetched, but it just seems so far away, despite it's just merely 1 to 2 kilometers away from some certain chest-thumping victory. Over at the Velika Novosilka sector, there is also very interesting developments. Suddenly, fighting is reported at Levatny again. The last time fighting was here is 1 month ago. So the Russians are attacking Levatny again, to my surprise in a way. So previously we usually see the fighting over at Prione. However, this is not the case. We are not seeing the fighting at Levatny. And the Russians also pushing at Staromayoske and Uruzhaine. So information coming from the Russian Defense Ministry talking about all these attacks. Levatny was reported by the Russian Defense Ministry as well. I'm not sure if this will develop into something more, or will this attack at Levatny be a one-off thing, or will it become something like a disaster for the Ukrainians where they just keep penetrating? Not sure, because now there is a lot of questions about the actual strength of the Ukrainian armed forces right now. Because some of this redeployment from the Orikhiv sector in the Zaporizhzhia Front over to some of the more serious front line like Avdiivka, Kupyansk, Bakhmut has weakened the line, and the fact that they need to redeploy is a serious problem, because the Russians don't really need all these redeployments. They have enough troops to hold every front. The only redeployment that seems to be, of concern was the redeployment of the VDV, and even that, the airborne forces that was redeployed over to the Robotyne region at the height of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, that was months ago. So the severe weakening of the Ukrainian armed forces is very disturbing. There was this report from the Russian Defense Ministry said that they repelled an attack close to Uspenivka. I wonder where is the Uspenivka that they mentioned about. No, there is no Uspenivka around here. The Uspenivka is actually this far away. So I do not know what is this supposed to mean. So, it's a question mark. Then we move on. We have covered basically the entire of the Donetsk region already. And we haven't covered here. So let's go to the southern fronts first. So before we go into the southern, the Kherson front, there is some Russian jets Ukrainian jets getting shot down. 2 MiG-29s were shot down, one over Sharoke or Sharokoye, and another one over the Beresnehovate. So this is 2 MiG-29s. This contrasts quite badly when you think about the Ukrainians' last shot down of a jet was in May, and then they only just shot down a Sukhoi 24. So the disparity in terms of the air power and air defense system is quite bad. And these are all shot down by air defense system according to the Russian Defense Ministry. The distance from the front line is 70 kilometers. The other one is also 70 kilometers. So 70-80 kilometers shot downs from air defense is pretty scary. And it's also, I wonder why they kept getting shot down, because all these jets were they can fly very low, and usually they fly very low to avoid getting shot down. So these jets might be conducting some kind of a launch of rockets, or long range missiles like cruise missiles, and they have to fly at a very high altitude, and this actually exposes them to air defense. I kind of suspect that might be the case. So but of course it's not clear that MiG-29 was supposed to shoot Storm Shadows. So we shall see how this goes. This is just my own projection or my own thinking. Another very crazy Lancet drone strike, this time round at Starosilka, or at Shostakovich. North of Starosilka, this is geolocated by Crimean Caprice. This distance from the front line is around 50 kilometers. It got Lanceted. So there was a radar station over at this area here, and then the Lancet actually hit it. So this distance is also quite crazy. And if you look at the Russian capability right now, they have this capability to consistently hit the rear position at relatively low cost. If you think about Ukrainian side, they have the same capability, but they use the HIMARS. HIMARS is super expensive to operate. The vehicle is expensive, the missiles are expensive, and the Russians basically have a lot more Lancets. By this case, as you can see from the previous or the last reports that I mentioned earlier in this video, there is a lot of Lancet strikes, and it's not just one Lancet unit or two Lancet units. It's basically every front line there is Lancet units that is launching Lancets. So this is definitely quite disastrous. Over in the Kherson Front, there was a geolocation of a Ukrainian boat getting hit by a Russian drone at this position, just opposite of Pridniprovsk. This mainly indicates that the Ukrainians continue to send in men and reinforcement or resupply over at their garrisons in this area here. So that's what I care about. It's not about the sinking of the boat. I'm quite sure that they can get more boats easily. Just that this simply shows the presence of Ukrainian forces in the southern bank of the Dnipro River. Over at the Krinky region, the Russian forces continue to be striking on the Ukrainian forces. It's not yet a kind of assault yet. It's mainly, they are just doing fire missions on the Ukrainian forces that chose to come over to Krinky and get that to do some S&M. So there is geolocation of Russian airstrike using the FAB bomb over at this position in Krinky. This further confirms that the Ukrainians continue to have a presence within Krinky itself. So that's all from the Kherson Front. We move on from the Kherson Front. We covered the Zaporizhzhia Front. We covered the Donetsk Front, Avdiivka Front, Bakhmut Front, Siversk Front. We now go into the Kreminna Front. So at the Kreminna Front, the Russian forces continue their offensive over in the region near Terny and Yampolivka. This time round, the fighting from Terny has spread over to Yampolivka, and there seems to be some kind of major push in this area here. It seems like the Russians really wants to push the Ukrainians towards the Zaporizhzhia River. So this is the Zaporizhzhia River, in case you do not know, and the Ukrainian forces is likely to struggle in this area here. This area here, there is this this valley region, this gully they call it, and there's heavy forest around this area here. So it's very good for the Ukrainians for defensive actions. But if they got pushed to Terny, then they don't have much chance. They will have to withdraw to the other side of the Zaporizhzhia River. And if you look onto the other side, there is not a lot of places to hide. It's just tree lines. So so this is a very important place for the Ukrainians to continue to fight. Further south, over at the Kreminna Front, fighting reported at the Kreminna Front, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, they continue to hit Ukrainian forces at Dibrova and Serbyansky Forestry. But Ryba mentioned that the Ukrainians tried to counterattack. As well as Dibrova, they also mentioned by the Russian Defense Ministry themselves, Center Group of Forces say that there is an assault group from the 63rd Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainians close to Dibrova. So there is this exchange of attacks in this area here. We shall continue to see how this goes. This fighting within this forest has been ongoing for a very, very long time. The titles are starting to look very stupid. It's getting, the number of dates is looking really bad. So we move on to the Svatove Front. At the Svatove Front, this is Svatove city. There is the interesting report. The Russian Defense Ministry mentioned fighting over at Vishnevoye, or Vishneve. So this is a bit far away from our front line. We previously see the front line around Avdiivka region. We do know that the Russians have been pushing in this area here since 6th of November, 13th of August. No, not that much actually in that sense. But suddenly we have a report about fighting in the area of Vishneve. So that's very, very interesting. Which means if this is true, then the Russians may have broke through in this area here, and they can actually spread out towards Special Trafneve in this area here and hit into the rear. But I doubt so. I doubt the Russians conduct this kind of lightning offensive nowadays. They like to take it slow and steady because they are already winning. There's no need to take risk. So that seems to be the case. And there is also fighting reported at Novoselivske. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, they mentioned that they defended against Russian attack at Novoselivske. So there's some kind of Russian push in this area here. The settlement currently now is disputed. The Russians seems to control most of it, but it seems to be largely a gray zone. The Russians do not, I don't think they entrench themselves much in this area here. It's safer to be outside of it. So this is largely like a gray zone, but there's not much fighting around this area here. Ukrainians has basically given up trying to conquer this place pretty much. Like they did try to counterattack, and this is as far as they can get. So moving on, we move into the Kupyansk Front. At the Kupyansk Front, at Pishchany, there is a Ukrainian Mi-8 shot down by air defense. So this is a bit near to the front line. If you look at the Russian front, the Ukrainian front line is actually at Kreminna and Klutelivka, not even at Tebaivka. If you look into the Ukrainian side, so so the Russians previously was reported to be attacking this Pishchany region on the 1st of December. So it was quite recent. That's why the mapping is a bit different from the Ukrainian one. So these two mapping is very highly differing, but this is actually very, very near to the front line, around 6 kilometers. So maybe it's some kind of evacuation, or maybe there is some VIP, some generals or commanders. I'm not sure. So the helicopter was used. I don't think it was used in some kind of a rocket attack, though usually we see these a lot in the earlier part of the war. Nowadays, I don't see the Ukrainians use it because I think they have ran out of ammo for the helicopters. So I really haven't seen a Ukrainian using the rocket attacks for a long time. So, but maybe there's just a lack of footages. Maybe they are using. So So moving over the Kupyansk Front, the Russians continue their offensive, mainly around the Liman-Pershi region and Sinkivka. Ukrainians are counter-attacking at Sinkivka as well as Ivanivka. So information about the Ukrainian attack was by the Russian Defense Ministry, whereas the Ukrainians and Ryba reported about the Russian attack. Of significance was that the Russian Defense Ministry talked about the south of Liman-Pershi. They say that the forces in, let me see, they said that they thwarted the Ukrainians forward position in the area near Lake Liman. So Lake Liman is actually this lake here, which looks nothing like a lake to me. It just looks like a clearing on this satellite map. So global warming is a very serious problem. We need to not use plastic, because plastic have no relationship with the weather. So there is I extended the gray zone into this area here, which because there's a possibility that the Russians are already around this area here, in order for them to thwart the rotation of the Ukrainian troops in around this area here. So the Russians continue to hold the northern positions in Sinkivka, while the Ukrainians are holding the central area, and the Russians are continuing to make attacks. Probably very positional. I don't think this assault. I don't think it's an assault operation. And that's it from the Kupyansk Front. And I believe I covered everything. So this is the summary for the day of 650 for the 5th of December. Do press the like button, subscribe. Like, really, if you haven't subscribed, I do not know why you don't subscribe yet, because I really need your support. So subscribe, and it helps to create a bigger reach for this channel. So this channel is a bit smaller than the main channel. So yeah, do help it grow. It is a very deliberate decision from me to divert the war reporting to a totally different channel, a totally new channel from the main channel, so that the main channel can cover geopolitics. It is a very expensive thing to do, as you probably know. If you are watching DPA, you probably also watch Military Summary, you probably watch Whip Union. You can see that the diversion of this channel severely affected the growth of DPA, but it is an important thing moving forward into the future. And yeah, so which is why the views are actually just a fraction of what my friends over at Military Summary, Dima and Osama at Whip is getting. So do help to support the channel, and also yeah, press the like button. Really very, very, very important. And of course, any feedback, do let me know in the description below. I would in the comments below, I will try to read them. And check out the description. There's a lot of links to the different DPA communities, from Discord to the Telegram chat group to the DPA forum. Check it out. You may find yourself a time sink over there. You may lose all your time to me. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.